Hey, welcome. Today we're diving deep into the really perplexing world of dementia. Now, it's a word we all hear, but what it actually means is so much more complex than just a single diagnosis. Together, we're going to unravel two of its most important and yet completely different forms, Alzheimer's and frontotemporal dementia. So let's just start with the central mystery, right? How is it possible that one person with a dementia diagnosis can't remember what they had for breakfast, while another person's personality completely changes, but their memory seems just fine? It feels like a paradox, but the answer to that question, well, it tells us the entire story of what dementia really is.
And here it is, our first huge clue. The word dementia is not a single disease. It's an umbrella term. Think of it like a category that covers a whole bunch of different underlying conditions. Just like heart disease isn't one thing, dementia isn't either. And that is the fundamental reason we see such wildly different symptoms.
So, to really get a handle on this, we're going to put two of the main culprits under the microscope. First, Alzheimer's disease, which you've probably heard of. It makes up about 80% of cases. And second, frontotemporal dementia, or FTD. Now, it's less common overall, but get this, it's a major cause of dementia in people under 65. Okay, so our investigation starts with a principle that honestly explains almost everything. It is all about location, location, location. Where a disease decides to strike first in the brain, that determines everything that follows. It sets the stage for the first symptoms, how the disease progresses, and the entire human experience of it. This slide just lays it out so perfectly with this analogy. So think of Alzheimer's as a fire starting in the brain's archives, the hippocampus, right where all your memories are filed away. But FTD, that's like a fire starting in the brain's front office, or maybe its HR department, the frontal and temporal lobes that control personality, social conduct, and language. Two totally different starting points.
And here's the immediate fallout from that. Because Alzheimer's hits the memory center first, the very first things to go are memory, learning, and your sense of direction. But because FTD hits that personality and language hub first, the early symptoms can be these shocking changes in behavior, a loss of empathy, or major trouble with speaking, all while memory can stay surprisingly sharp.
Okay, so we know where the attack is happening, but what's actually causing the damage? Let's zoom way in, from the brain region all the way down to the molecular level, and look at the hard evidence, the toxic proteins at the heart of both diseases. For Alzheimer's, the culprits are pretty infamous, amyloid plaques and tau tangles. You've got these amyloid beta proteins that clump together into sticky, gunky plaques outside the brain cells. And then, inside the cells, another protein called tau just collapses into these twisted messes called tangles. These two things are the classic telltale signs of AD. So, the leading theory for how this happens is called the amyloid cascade. And it all kicks off with a simple imbalance. The brain is making more of this amyloid beta stuff than it can clear away. This leftover junk starts clumping together, forming those toxic plaques. And from there, the plaques set off this just devastating chain reaction. They trigger inflammation, they mess up communication between brain cells, and they help create those tau tangles inside. The end result of this whole cascade is the death of brain cells. Now, let's switch over to FTD. It has a completely different set of culprits. It's a whole new lineup. Yes, some forms of FTD involve that tau protein, but many cases are caused by other proteins clumping together, proteins with names like TDP43 or FUS. It's a totally different molecular fingerprint, which, by the way, is why a test for Alzheimer's might come back completely negative in a person with FTD. And the way these proteins cause damage is different too. Instead of that big amyloid cascade, the toxic proteins in FTD are more like internal saboteurs. They wreck the cell's internal highway system, and they mess with RNA processing, which is basically like scrambling the cell's ability to read its own instruction manual. This sabotage leads to cell death, but it's very targeted, right in those frontal and temporal lobes. Okay, so we've got the location and the molecules. Let's pull all this science together and see what it actually looks like for a person. Let's talk about the profound human impact these differences have on patients and their families. This table just lays it all out in stark black and white. Just look at the age of onset. Alzheimer's is typically a disease of older age, usually over 65. But FTD, man, it's just devastating. It often strikes so much earlier, between 45 and 65, right in the middle of someone's career, when they might still have young kids. The early symptoms are complete opposites. Memory loss for AD, personality changes for FTD. Even the genetic risks are totally different. There's a quote that I think just captures the heart of this difference perfectly. Alzheimer's is so often described as the disease that erases your past. But FTD, because it attacks the very seat of our personality, can fundamentally change who a person is. It's a profound and chilling distinction. One disease takes the story of your life, the other can take the person living it. So why is understanding all of this so incredibly important? Because it completely changes how we search for a cure. We are in a race against the clock, and getting that precise diagnosis right, well, that's our starting line.
And here it is. This is the absolute bottom line. You cannot treat these diseases the same way. A brand new, amazing drug that clears amyloid plaques in an Alzheimer's patient will do absolutely nothing for an FTD patient whose brain cells are being clogged up by TDP-43. It's like using the key to your house to try to start your car. It just won't work. Accurate diagnosis based on the biology is everything.
But here's the really good news. This knowledge is fueling an absolute explosion of super-targeted research. For Alzheimer's, we have antibodies that act like tiny tow trucks to haul away the amyloid. For some types of FTD, scientists are using gene therapy to deliver a working copy of a faulty gene. And for both diseases, we're seeing incredible strategies like antisense oligonucleotides, which are basically like molecular off switches that can stop a cell from making the toxic protein in the first place. So where does this leave us? Well, it leaves us with this thought. Dementia isn't one single enemy. It's a collection of very distinct foes. But by meticulously mapping out their differences, from the brain regions they target to the molecules they use as weapons, we are finally developing a precision-guided arsenal to fight back. The path forward isn't about finding one magic bullet. It's about finding many.